1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we were, the 5 of us, in a line. Well, I think it was more of a curved line, to be honest. To the right of me was a tall, old, but handsome man. I would say probably double my height, but everyone appears like that from this distance. He had a grey head and a tiny grey moustache. And he was smiling. I could see he was smiling. And his moustache sort of pointing upwards when he smiled. In his head, the beat wasn't 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It was more like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And he was holding my hand and dragging me to that beat in his head, which is very different to mine. And then to the right of him was a lady, maybe about mid-60s, dark brown hair, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, looking quite retro, to be honest, for her age, I'd say. She was holding his hand, and her beat was very different. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's how she was walking. So just imagine, we were all sort of walking like this because we had a different beat. And then to the left of me, to the far left, there was another old lady, this time mid-70s. She had a sari on, tiny glasses, grey-white hair, you know, that perfect mixture which just shows wisdom rather than anything else. Her beat was definitely the beat that she has every day when she goes around doing her busy business. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Almost like a fast garba. Now, she wasn't holding anyone's hand, but to the right of her, she was just touching the shoulder of an older man. Bold, no facial hair, and very stylish glasses. Obviously, holding hands is out of the question here for her. And she was slightly sort of angled backwards. She didn't want to be seen. She didn't want to be in the line. And that man to her right and to my left was my Dada. His beat was very steady, probably right on point, to be honest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's how he walked. So I was sort of being pulled like this as we walked and marched. Why were we marching? We were practicing for my entrance to the wedding. I'd asked both sets of grandparents to be there with me, to walk me in. And in my head, it was like a Bollywood film. Everything would be choreographed, everything would be on time. But as I looked to both sides, I thought, come on. The reality is, this line is never going to be straight. I just need to accept we're going to walk in like a wave, and it will all be fine. So I looked at my Dada, and he smiled at me. This was definitely outside his comfort zone. Earlier that morning, I remembered he'd been suited up, shirt, tie, briefcase in hand, gone to work, driven himself to work, and come back to me, ecstatic, saying, come on, we're going to practice this dancing walk. He smiled at me, and whilst he was walking, he continued smiling whilst trying. Earlier on in that week, a gigantic tent had shown up at our home. Now, being from a Shaka family, we said, no problem, we will put this tent up. There's about 5 of us, but, and we're all amateurs. Never seen a tent in my life. But, we will put it up in our back garden for one of the events. 5 of us. No, I forgot. There was my Nana and my Dada, all geared up to put this tent up. So we went outside and started. I was like, okay, let's have a plan. And my Dada was like, let's just try. He smiled and said, let's try. So there he was, putting these huge pegs in, sort of trying to stamp them into the ground. And then, towards the end, we had a bit of the tent up, and he stood on this stool. And so his left hand doesn't really work, although he likes to think it does. So he was trying to tighten the tent, and he lifted his left hand up, but couldn't really reach on the stool. So he used his right hand to support it, and then tugged at the rope. And then he looked at me, smiling whilst trying. A few months later, after all the shenanigans had sort of been over, I went home and we decided to have a relaxing games night. So of course, games night starts with round 1, carom. Everyone's comfortable with carom in our family. Dada won, of course, as he always does. I think there's a knack to these things, but I don't know what it is. The second round, we thought, let's introduce something which Dada can't win at. We introduced double. Now, many of you will have played double. And it's got a tiny round card with many different images, all different sizes every time you change the card. And they all change their positions. And we explained the game to Dada, Amba. And we said, let's see if we can win at this. He won't have a shot. So things in our family are always done in Gujarati at home. So double was played in Gujarati. So he looked, squinting at these tiny images, and then looked down on the card on the floor. And then he shouted, "Bijli, lightning," and put it down. I was like, oh my days, how is he doing this? Next one, I was still staring at my first card. Suraj, sun, put it down. Third time. Goro, horse, put it down. Of course, he won the round of double. And he smiled at me, smiling whilst trying. All of our grandparents have been through so much, from moving from India or Africa to the UK. We can talk about the trial and tribulations they've gone through. But I've had the privilege of living with my grandparents. So actually, most of my memories are happening now, are being formed now. The stories that I remember about yesterday when I was talking to my grandparents. And for me, that's really lucky. One thing that stands out is the resilience, the ability to adapt, the ability to try anything, whether it's dancing, walking through a wedding, or whether it's a round of double. And whilst trying, always smiling. Smiling whilst trying.